Okay, just doing a sound check before we set up. Saba is my wingman for today, or wingwoman. Can you hear me, Saba? I'm hoping she's going to say yes. And she can hear me. Excellent. Thank you. Right. For those who have logged on early, I'd love for you to go on a website right now. Hopefully you can use 2 devices. Anyone who's logging on, if you could go to this website, menti.com, and when you have gone to that website, if you enter the code, that's there as well. So this is the How to Get into Medical School talk. We're a little bit early, but we're ready to go. So I can't actually see who is on Facebook right now. So if you have logged on early, please go to this website, www.menti.com. If you can't log in because you can only log into this talk, don't worry, it's just something lighthearted to get us started with. You'll be prompted to use a code, which is 51365804. And when you get to that website, hopefully you'll see this screen. So it's 5:30, hopefully we're on time. I'm all ready to go my end. We'll just wait a couple of minutes. I'm waiting for my wing person, Saba. Okay, so she's given me the thumbs up. For those who've logged in, please go to menti.com. Okay, hopefully you can log into that with your phone or laptop. Parents, children, anyone watching can log on separately. You'll be prompted for a code 51365804, which is on the screen. And you should get this picture. Okay. Now I want to make this first session part interactive. So the question is, what is your biggest fear about applying for medicine? And that can be you as a parent or you as a child. So anyone logging on, I'd like you to put some answers. There should be a space to free text when you're on menti.com. And hopefully we'll get some answers going. So what is your biggest fear about applying for medicine? And that could be you as a parent for your child, or perhaps you as someone who's applying. Just free text some answers. Flying a bit blind here because I can't quite see Facebook, but if you just free text some answers, that would be great. And we'll just wait a while on the screen while we're waiting for a couple of people. Oh, someone's put in something. So confidence, I think that's confidence, a typo. Someone's worried about confidence. Okay. Any other offers? What are you worried about applying for medical school? That I would be too much pressure if it get placed. Good. Cost, someone has put down. Excellent. And I'm going to go through all of these. Okay. Any other answers? I'm looking to my left because I've got Sabra on standby just in case there's any issues. That you're not good enough. Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's go to the next one. Why do you want to pursue a career in medicine? If we can have some voting, please. Do you want to pursue a career in medicine because of parental pressure? Or perhaps you want to go to medicine because you think it's a lucrative career for the money? Maybe it's the prestige that's making you apply to medicine. It could be the idea of a doctor that you'll get lots of respect. Job security. We've got one vote already, caring for people. Okay. And I think that's a very good one. Someone's put the money. Okay, that's nice to be honest. Another one's for caring for people. And I want you to be honest. I can't see the names of people applying, so just do what you feel. It's completely anonymous. Pressure from school. Maybe someone has suggested that you apply, or maybe it's none of the above. Okay, so we've got a couple of votes for caring for people. So you guys are good people. Excellent. Right, last one is actually a bit of a quiz. So I want you, hopefully you can hear the music by now. I want you to answer the correct question. Let's have a look. Whoever answers fastest gets more points. Myths about medicine. Which one is correct? You can only vote one answer. Got 30 seconds. Good, 2 people got that right. Excellent, well done. So one of the most important parts is indeed applying for the entrance exam. Excellent, right, so let's go back. Now let's start the formal part of the talk. That's just something a little bit to get an idea of how you're feeling and what kind of things that you're thinking of. So let's just share a screen here. And hopefully you can all see that slide. Pathway to medicine. This is actually session 1 of a series of talks that I give. And one of the reasons that it's a good time for me to give this talk is things are quite quiet in the sense of the medical school applications. We'll come to the end of the interview process. So it's a good time for me to give this talk. And I've seen a lot of advice kind of zooming around on Facebook, Twitter, just people word of mouth, people get in contact, and a lot of myths about applications for medicine. So I wanted to debunk those myths in this session. It's going to be quite full on. There's a lot of content. It's not being recorded, unfortunately. So take some notes. I think you can watch it back when you are on Facebook. So do that if you miss anything. So let's go into it. Who am I? Okay, so my day job is a GP. So I have been a GP for about, I would say, 16, 17 years, so quite a while. I teach at UCL Medical School. I'm what's known as a CPP tutor, which is a clinical and professional practice tutor for year 1, and I teach ethics and law to year 4. I'm also a personal tutor. So just like at school, you have a personal tutor you go to if you're in times of trouble. I'm also a personal tutor at UCL. I do occasionally one-off sessions at King's, but my main place is at UCL. I examine for medical schools, and I'm also an official interviewer for a couple of the London medical schools, Queen Mary's, George's, King's. So I've sat on the panels for those and familiar with the interview process. In my other hobby is a mindfulness coach, which I do privately. I've also written a book and articles, and I do talks like this. So my biggest bugbear is that a lot of people like to give advice. And I think it's important to know my credentials because you need to get advice from the right people. So I know that there are non-medics who like to give advice. And I think In one sense, that's okay, but really you'll see as the talk goes on, if you're going to get advice about applying to medical school, then my blanket statement is probably get that from a doctor. The only non-medical people I would take advice from is people who are on interview panels or people who are on the admissions process of that university. And I would say medical students. Remember, medical students are not doctors, but they are actually sometimes better than doctors when it comes to giving advice. They've just done interviews, they've just written their personal statement, they've just done the entrance exams. So they're a good bunch of people also to get advice from. So that would be my caveat, is why I put this there, is to make sure you get advice from people who are reliable and have good credentials. So that's one of the reasons I hope I've convinced you why I'm qualified to give this talk. So one thing about medicine is that by no means you should underestimate how competitive it is. It is difficult, it is a slog, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. Okay, looking at the statistics for 2020, 23,710 people applied to medicine. And of those that got through were about 7,000, which is about 30%. If we look at 2021, the numbers have actually gone up. Increase of about 21%, 28,000 people applied. And for 2022, I'm sure that's gone up again. Now, you can be that 30% that gets into medical school, okay? There's no reason why you can't. And the various reasons why people fail in their application. It could be they haven't got the right grades for A-levels. They get the offer, but they don't reach the grades. It could be they didn't pass the interview. It could be that they've done the application wrong, or they've not submitted UCAS in time. A whole host of reasons. Their personal statement might not be good enough. And the reason I want to do this talk is to show you all the various hoops it requires to apply for medicine. There are lots of different things that involve in a medical application, but you can get it right and you can be that 30%. But it's not easy. So let's start from the very beginning. The foundation or the starting point will be your GCSEs. Do GCSEs matter? And the short answer is yes. Places like Oxford, they will actually do a numerical ranking of your GCSEs. Birmingham Medical School is similar, and they'll use that along your BMAT result. I don't know if anyone's heard about what BMATs are. They're an entrance exam, and they will combine that data and they will decide who they call for interview. Some places, GCSEs don't matter as much, but I think the majority of medical schools, it does matter. And that's how you should approach this. Most successful candidates will be scoring 7, 8s and 9s. I don't think it's correct to say you have to get all 9s. It would certainly boost your application, but don't be disheartened if you haven't got all 9s. We have seen the last couple of years, we have seen inflated GCSE grades. So just bear in mind, people are walking around with 8s and 9s mainly. Now, some medical schools require specific grades as well. So if you have a look at the medical website, the medical school website, Imperial, for example, will say on their website, you need a grade B or at least a 6 in English language. Manchester say that at least 5 GCSEs grade A or A star. And again, UCL are quite specific on their website as well. And I think when you apply for medical schools, you have to do your due diligence. You can't have blanket statements about all medical schools. So when I see questions on the chat, do medical schools ... whatever they want to ask, generally each medical school is its own entity. So you can be spoon-fed the data by someone like me, but there's always a chance of a little bit of error because it relies on me being up to date, and every year things can change. So my biggest advice to you as a parent or as a client, a child sitting for medical schools, make sure you go to each medical school website and find out what their criteria is, because it does differ from medical school to medical school. So that's a little bit about GCSEs. They do matter to a certain extent. And how about A-levels? Well, your choice of A-levels certainly matters, and the grades you get. Now for Oxford, their criteria is chemistry plus one of the others, biology, physics or maths, whereas UCL want chemistry and biology. There are certain colleges in Cambridge which require maths. So again, it varies. Chemistry is a must for you do medicine. There's no ways about that. And I think to boost your chances, I would say chemistry, biology and maths is a good combination if you want to have the widest choice of applying to medical schools. However, 2 sciences and something completely not science for the third is also equally acceptable. it's important that you enjoy your A-levels. It's a hard work. It's a big jump from GCSE to A-levels. So do something you enjoy. You might enjoy French. Chemistry and biology of French is absolutely acceptable for many medical schools. Some A-levels are not considered, so general studies and critical thinking are not recognised as A-levels. But there's no reason why you can't take a third A-level, which is not science. This question I've seen bandied around quite a lot, whether you should do 4 A-levels. The short answer is no, it's not necessary. When we think about 4 A-levels, those candidates who are thinking about 4 A-levels are usually the ones who are going for Oxford and Cambridge. And they actually state that there is no requirement to offer more than 3 A-levels. In fact, they're going to suggest that it's better to do well in 3 rather than do mediocre in 4. So don't feel any pressure in any way to do 4 A-levels. If you thoroughly enjoy studying 4 subjects and can cope with all the application process, then by all means do, but don't feel pressured to take 4 A-levels. It's not necessary. And bearing in mind, some schools can't offer 4 A-levels to their students, so medical schools can't discriminate. So talking about A-levels, what's a typical offer for a medical school? Well, they usually want A-star, AA, but again, this varies from medical school to medical school. Cambridge, for example, they like their candidates to have A-star, A-star, and A. Manchester require 3 A's. So again, do your due diligence. If you think you're going to struggle to get that A-star, go for medical schools which require a lower offer, but you'll have to go into each website and see what that offer is. And the offer could change year to year. As medicine gets more and more competitive, those grade boundaries could go up. So do your research. And there are about 34 medical schools to apply to in the UK. So that's a lot of research, I know, but it's worth it. I think this one needs to be addressed, and I've put this in here. People who go to grammar or state school have a better chance of entering medicine. On the whole, I'm going to say no, and I'll explain why. There's something called contextual offers. Okay, so we've said a typical offer is A-star, AA. However, if you have come from a certain criteria, universities will lower that offer for you. They take into account your personal circumstances, and they give you what's called a contextual offer. So an example would be, let's say St. George's, their typical offer are 3 A's. But if you spent time in a foster home, or let's say you spent time in a local authority care, they will lower that requirement to ABB. Okay, so this is called a contextual offer. Who qualifies for contextual offer? Well, typically these are the criteria, and you have to meet 2 out of 4 of the criteria. You have to go to a school where the average A-level grade is C or below. Go to school with low progression, where not many people go to higher education. Go to an area where very few people go on to higher education, or live in an area with high levels of deprivation. So can you see, it's not necessarily true that just because you go to a state school that you will get a better chance of getting into medical school. You have to fulfill a criteria, and people do crazy things. I've heard of people moving sixth forms to go to a state school thinking they're going to have a better chance. And I would say, don't do that just for this. If you want to find more on contextual offers, there's a website, go to the medicalschool.ac.uk, and there's an information sheet about contextual. And most of the medical schools that do give contextual offers, again, they will have some information on their website. Bearing in mind, not all medical schools offer this. Typically Queen Mary's, Birmingham, Manchester, George's, there's some of the ones, but a lot of them do. So we talked about contextual offers. We talk about widening participation as well. This is another scheme which has been established, which allows people from, let's say, less well-off backgrounds, and they want to enable that they have fairer access to medicine. So kind of your underrepresented groups. And your school will know if it qualifies for the widening participation scheme. So ask your school, they will know this. It's a bit of a complicated way, but it's based on social and economic data. Okay, so you might qualify for widening participation. And what does that mean? Well, if you've come from a widening participation background, these are some of the things that you will be, the criteria is that you're the first in your family to go to university, you have free school meals, you've been in care services, if you come from a community that has a low number of students that go to university. So these are examples where you qualify for widening participation. So again, have a look at the school website, get in contact with the admissions of the medical schools. They're very helpful and they'll be happy to help you. Speak to your school to see if you qualify. What are the benefits if you're in widening participation? Well, the medical schools run certain events just for you. They will give you practical advice. They'll give talks about money and finances as you're a student at university. They will give you some information about the admission process. You'll get to speak to members of staff. So watch out for these events. A lot of the medical schools do events just for students of widening participation. You may get money off the entrance fee exams as well. So it's worth having a look at that if you think you qualify. So I just want to put all that up because there's this myth that just because you go to a state school, you'll get benefits, and that's not necessarily true. It's a little bit more complicated. So I've got an example here, Brighton and Sussex Medical School. They say that sixth formers who are part of their widening participation program called BrightMed are actually guaranteed an interview. You may be eligible for guaranteed interview in medicine. So there are certain perks to that. Right, so that's GCSE and A-levels discussed. I thought I'd go on to EPQ now, and a lot of schools offer this, some schools don't. It's basically equivalent to half an A-level. It stands for Extended Project Qualification. It's an essay where you write an essay on a subject of your choice that interests you, usually done in year 12. Medical schools were not lower they offer just because you've done an EPQ. However, any medical school that operates on UCAS tariff, UCAS points, then it's a bonus because EPQs do give UCAS points. Because some schools can't accommodate or hold EPQs, medical schools can't discriminate if you haven't done one. Typically, I would say about 120 hours study time. And what are the benefits of doing an EPQ? Well, they're an improved way of learning. They show motivation and passion, that you can work independently. They can manage time because it's something that you do as an extra thing. You get skills in writing essays. If you present your EPQ, that would be great. That's another skill that you've got. You might get research skills, and it's something you can talk about in your personal statement and your interviews. So if you can manage your 3 A-levels and the entrance exams, then I think it's well worth it. That's a big thing with all these things, all these extra things like the 4th A-level and the EPQ. Can you juggle it with everything else? And that's a really important question that you need to ask yourself. UCL have a little bit about their stance on EPQs. They say it can provide useful preparation for undergraduate studies, such as project and making a presentation. It allows them to enjoy research in an area of particular interest, and it provides a topic for discussion during interviews. We would encourage students to consider taking EPQ if it is offered at their school. If you are not able to undertake an EPQ, then we would encourage you to try to develop the relevant research skills through independent learning. So basically, it'll be good to do one, but if your school doesn't offer it, then there are other ways of doing extra research. Now, I know I'm going through this at quite a quick pace. I can't see Facebook comments at the moment, but I will ask questions. There'll be time for questions at the end, so feel free to hold on to those, and hopefully Saba can help me answer all those questions. So I'm just going to go through the presentation, and then at the end, feel free to ask anything. So COVID has had a big impact on medicine and healthcare in general, but also on the medical admissions process. In 2020, we had a record level of A-level grades. The grades were super high. And as you've seen, there's an increase in medical application year on. And one of the reasons I think in this COVID era is job security. You know, doctors are so sought. So I think that's really beneficial. And that's why medicine has been such an advantage as a career. So exam grades. We know that people are walking around with lots of 8s and 9s. So having exam grades alone isn't going to guarantee you a place at medical school. Like I said, there's various other things that you need to juggle. We need an outstanding personal statement. We need a high UCAT and BMAT score. And I'm going to talk about UCAT and BMAT later on in the talk. So just having good results, good grades isn't enough anymore. It's become a very competitive field. Something you might want to think about if you're in year 12, which universities should I apply to? The UCAS deadline is later on in the year. But these are things to differentiate between a medical school. You might want to apply to a medical school that's part of the Russell Group universities. You might be thinking about Oxbridge. If you're more inclined towards an academic medical school, then that'd be an academic career. So maybe you want to go into research, and Oxbridge might be for you. And remember, you can only choose 4 medical schools in your UCAS. Some medical schools use BMAT as their entry process, and some medical schools will use UCAT as their entry process. So they are 2 different entrance exams, and we'll go into those. So a little bit about Russell Group universities. Why choose a Russell Group university? So not specifically medical schools, thinking about it in the broader sense. Universities that are part of the Russell Group are more involved with research. With research comes funding. People who tend to go to Russell Group universities have high employment rates after they graduate. There's a lot more student support. Student satisfaction tends to be higher in Russell Groups. They're satisfied with their courses. They have lots of links to businesses, and 61% of Russell Group graduates are in higher end professions, which means they're earning more. Generally, in medical school terms, if you want to be a doctor at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what medical school you go to. It's a professional degree. At the end of it, you'll be a doctor. Generally, where you study tend to where you get a job. But other than that, I think medical schools are all the same. I would say if you're both going for a job interview, someone who's gone to a Russell Group university might possibly tip the edge than someone who hasn't. But at the end of the day, you'll all be doctors, whatever medical school you go to. These are Russell Group universities in the UK. These are all of them. I've just listed them all. These are not specifically medical schools, but they're all the Russell Group universities. LSE doesn't do medicine, for example, just to give you an idea which are Russell Group universities. Right, so what should you be doing to start building your application? And this is really for year 11 and year 12. And if you're in year 12, I think this is kind of stuff that you want to have completed by the end of the summer holidays, because over summer, you're going to start revising for your entrance exams. So try and have all this finished. Year 11, year 10, you can start building on this in the background. There are various things you can do to support your medical school application. Attend lectures and talks. So much since COVID is online, so you don't even have to leave your house. The fact that you came to this talk today, you can talk about that. You found out how to research what involves going to medical school. This talk counts towards your application research. You can mention it in your interviews and personal statements. Do a research project. We mentioned the EPQ. If you don't want to go down the EPQ route, you can do your own research. Anything that you find interesting. Go to theatres, museums. There's an old operating theatre near Guy's Hospital, if that takes your fancy. Taster sessions, a lot of medical schools run these, and workshops. I'll talk about work experience in a little bit, but that's something that you definitely want to get going. Current affairs, COVID, current affairs, something that comes up in interviews. We want to know that you're aware of current affair issues. So keep abreast on the news. BBC Health is a good one. Podcasts, radio shows, essay competitions. So there's a variety of things you can do. If you're not someone who likes to listen to talks, then there are other things you can do to build your application. So all this should be going on in the background. And the whole point of all those things is to link it to this, okay? When you're doing your work experience, when you're doing your research project, when you're going to an operating theatre or listening to a talk, this is what I want you to link it to. Because one of the things I find with students is that they do all this work experience and then they don't know what to do with it. Right, I've done the GP slot and I've been to the hospital, and now what? And the whole point is that you've got to link it to qualities of a doctor, which is why I take issue when non-medics give advice about applying to medical school. You're only going to know qualities of doctor from someone who is a doctor. And this is on the Oxford University website. These are the qualities of doctors we're looking for in the personal statement and in the interviews. We're looking for someone who has the ability to be empathetic, who's motivated. Someone who's done an EPQ or research project shows that they're motivated. The fact you attended this talk shows me that you're motivated. Your communication skills, that could be through volunteering, that could be through working in Tesco. That still counts as a good work experience. Are you honest? Do you have integrity? Are you aware of ethical issues? Can you work with others? So if you've been on a cricket team, That counts. Can you deal with pressure, increased workload, so getting good A-level grades? And values that align with the NHS Constitution, and you can look those up, the values of the NHS Constitution. So this all has to link with this, and I will show you how to do that later on if you come to one of my other talks. So I've put a reading list together. Reading is very important. We want to see that you've done the extra motivation to find out what it is about medicine. These are some of the books that you can go for. Don't think this is a set reading list. That doesn't exist in medicine. Just choose anything that takes your fancy. And it's what you learned from that book. It doesn't matter if you've done 10 books. That doesn't mean you're going to be in a more advantageous position than someone who's read one book. It's what you learned from that book. Some of these might give you an insight in what it is to be a GP. One of these books that talks about how it was that they were a doctor, but yet then they were a patient, and that difference of experience. So don't think that it's about quantity, it's about quality. And these are just some examples of some books you might want to read. If you're not a reader, you can go for some podcasts. Things like TED Talks are great, Royal Society of Medicine, lots of things on YouTube. NHS England have some podcasts, and NHS Frontline. So if that's not your thing, have a listen to a talk. This is another one that I recommend from the Gresham College, www.gresham.ac.uk/series/infections. This is a great talk by Chris Whitty. Although it's happened in the past, I think you can still watch it. But go on their website, they have lots of talks coming up, and I think they're really good ones. Thinking about courses, how to get more research into your medical school application. Again, these are some websites you can go on. King's Fund is a good one if you want to know more about the NHS structure. FutureLearn has some great courses, and these are all free. You don't need to pay for expensive courses, and certainly don't need to pay for residential courses to learn about medicine. The whole point of medicine is that we want to make it accessible to students to apply. So you don't need to apply to expensive courses. There are lots of free courses going around. So a little bit of example of how current affairs could be relevant when you're applying for medicine. For example, we had the Black Lives Matter movement. This highlights the issue about ethics and race in medicine. And then if we did some further reading on it, we could see that in COVID, a lot of the BAME community actually died from COVID very early on, and there were high death rates from the BAME community. So it all links in. So I've taken a topic here that caught my interest in the news. Then I decided to do some wider reading. How does this link to medicine? And that's an example of how you can put that in your personal statement. I was motivated by an issue, and so I did some further research on it. We mentioned essay competitions. I think this is particularly useful if you're probably going for Oxford and Cambridge. That's something where you go beyond the curriculum. Again, something might have taken your fancy, and so you want to research it more. It shows that you're more motivated, enthusiastic. It shows that you can manage things. You've got good time management by doing this extra. You gain research skills, very similar to the kind of skills you would gain if you do an EPQ. And I'm sorry, this is a very busy slide, but if you want to apply for some essay competitions in medicine, feel free to take a screenshot. Like I say, it's not being recorded, but these are some of the ones that you could go for. I think some of them have a deadline. You can only apply in year 12, but go through each one and have a look. And if you don't want to do something as fancy as applying for an essay, go for a school magazine. Write an article for your school magazine. You were interested in Black Lives Matter and the impact it had on healthcare, so you decided to write an article for your local school magazine. Just as good. Okay, it doesn't need to be fancy. Okay, let's talk about work experience. And this is where, again, we have a couple of myths. As an interviewer, as someone who reads personal statements, we're very sympathetic that it's difficult to get work experience, okay? We know that, and we sympathize with that. However, that said, there are a variety of ways you can get work experience, okay? And some of it, if you get a group of friends together who are applying for medicine, family or friends, whatever, cousins, relatives, just send loads of emails, okay? Divide it up. Email your GP, local GP, your local walk-in centre, email any hospital departments. Schools are quite good at that. Your local school will be a resource, your careers advice centre. If you've got any family or friends, people you know, then just call them, send them an emails. What's the worst that can happen? You've lost a bit in time and no one replies, but some do reply. Doctors generally want to help you, and at no cost. Okay, this is free. So they want to help you. It's just a matter of time. That's the only reason they don't respond. So definitely cold call them, email them. What's the worst that's going to happen? You might get lucky that way. Hospice and care homes, pharmacy, dentists, these are wider ranges. These are getting to know how other healthcare teams work with doctors. So they have a valuable place. But I don't want you to think, oh no, I didn't get a work experience at GP. Oh no, I didn't get a work experience at care home. It doesn't matter, okay? We know that is difficult. And there are lots of online work experiences you can do, which is just as good. That's absolutely fine. You can do some volunteering as well. It doesn't have to be medical. There are a lot, in that quiz that we did, the Mentimeter quiz, you talked about caring role. Learn about caring role in these kind of things. So have a look at that. There's lots of volunteering you can do. First aid courses, listening service. You can volunteer for things like 7 Cups and Young Minds, where you listen to people. Charity shops. You learn a lot about communication by working in a charity shop, working with elderly in charity shops who come in, listening to their stories, answering their queries. It's almost some befriending that goes on. All those skills are hugely important to a doctor. Mentoring young children, different skills. It shows you how to work with young children, how you need to change your communication when you're working with young children. Again, very relevant to being a doctor. So lots of different types of work experience. Think outside the box. Don't get bogged down. It has to be a GP or hospital. It's great if you can, but don't worry if you can't. We understand. With work experience, there's a myth that you have to do a set number of hours. That's not true. You don't have to do months and months. It's great if you can put that in your work experience that you've done months and months, but if you haven't, that's okay. Again, it's what did you learn from that work experience that's more important. We're not interested in that you did 8 or 9 different work experience. We're not interested that you did it for 6, 7 months. If you do, that's great. It shows commitment on your part, but don't worry if you can't. We know these are difficult times. Generally, my take is, and this isn't an official line by any chance, but 2 weeks I think is enough for you to gain an idea and an understanding of that place where you're doing your work experience. Why do we like for you to have work experience? And work experience is something that is going to feature in your personal statement. You're going to be asked about it in the interview. Okay, so it is a very important part of the application process. Medicine is a professional degree. Okay, it's not like history or English. At the end of it, you're not quite sure what career you're going to go into. You are going to be a doctor by the end of it. That's what we mean by a professional degree. We want to know that you understand that once you enter into that degree, once you become into the medical degree, you're then not going to be a carpenter or a lawyer by the end of it. You're going to be a doctor. So you're on this set path. Through work experience, you're going to realize, is this path for you? And that's probably one of the most important things I want you to get out of your work experience. Get an idea what it's like to be a doctor. And maybe you might think, actually, you know what, this isn't for me. That's fine. The work experience has served its job. Or on the other hand, you might have found that is amazing. This is definitely what I want to do. So medical schools want to know that you've taken the time to research what it's like to be a doctor. Do you have what it takes? Do you have the personal qualities of what it takes to be a doctor? Do you have good communication skills? Are you empathetic? Do you have academic ability? Do you have scientific curiosity? These are all the things we're going to try and tease out in the interview and the personal statement. And again, it's very important because we're going to ask about it in the interviews. Okay, so it's not just a tick box exercise. There is a purpose to why you should do work experience. And like I said, think outside the box. It's not necessarily just that you have to go to a hospital or a GP setting. Non-medical things count. If you worked in your dad's news agent, if you've done the paper round, if you work in Tesco, it counts because you're developing listening skills, you're being part of a team. You might be in a leadership role. It develops your resilience, waking up every morning, having to do a paper round when it's windy or rainy. That counts. Those are skills you're going to need as a doctor. So don't feel that you need to go and watch open heart surgery and it has to be this fanciful work experience. It doesn't, okay? It's what you gain out of that work experience that matters. Okay, sorry, I know I'm going quick. There's a lot to cover. Volunteering ideas, I've just put some ideas together. You can go do a befriending service, fundraising, kind of Macmillans or for your local school. Supporting those who are isolated, like it could be a neighbour, an elderly person, maybe doing their shopping for them. Teaching, I know a lot of you teach maybe 11 plus or certain subjects to younger children, that counts. Go to the gov.uk, get some ideas for volunteering as well. It's all relevant. If you struggle to get work experience, these are some free work experience that's online. Brighton, Sussex do some, Observe GP, Chelsea and Westminster. I think COVID has really turned things around. There's a lot more opportunities now when you do work experience online. I've put some other organisations run by medical students, Medology, MedicMind. I have no affiliation with any of them, so I'm just putting that out there. You might want to go to these. They do free work experience, and Blue Peanut is run by a dear friend and a GP up north. So they do work experience as well, all online, and they're free. Like I said, people struggle. They do this work experience and they don't know what to do with it. So this is just some advice that I put together. If you have managed to secure work experience place, let's say it's a GP setting. What I want you to do is focus on the minute details, as if you've got a magnifying glass and you're really being hypercritical of that consultation. For example, you sit in a GP setting. I want you to notice, did the doctor use open-ended questions? I don't know if you know what open-ended questions are, but for example, if a patient walked in and I said, can you tell me what's been going on? Or if I said, tell me about your headache, that's more of a closed question. So open-ended questions are how we start the consultation. So observe those. Did the doctor use open-ended questions? How did the doctor position his chair? Did he do it to face the patient? Maybe he knelt down because it was a child and that made them feel more comfortable. Did the doctor pause to allow time for the patient to understand what they were saying? Or did the doctor speak at such a fast pace that the patient couldn't understand? Did the doctor speak slowly? These are all good signs, okay? And I want you to be hypercritical and log all this down, because this stuff is what you're going to need in your personal statement and interview. So let's say I saw a patient, I was a medical student or a student like you, and I was sitting in a GP setting, an old man came in, let's say he had arthritis, and let's say he said his arthritis was stopping him from mowing the lawn. So what are we looking for in that consultation? I'm looking for the fact that you can reflect on that consultation. I'm not too worried about the fact that you managed to secure work experience at the GP. That's not the whole point. I'm more impressed with what you learned from that consultation. And what I expect a student to learn from that work experience is the ability to empathize. That you understood what it was like for that patient. You were able to walk in their shoes and you think, wow, arthritis in his hands, that must be very difficult to mow the lawn. It's quite a heavy machine. It might be difficult to get it out of the shed. You understood the impact of that arthritis on their life as a whole. They love to mow the lawn. That's really affected what they do in their spare time. And if they can't do what they love in their spare time, that could lead to depression. So think about how these skills and experiences might make you a better doctor. And that is the whole point of work experience, is what did you gain from it? You must reflect on it. Okay, it's not a top tick box exercise. Right, I've done the hospital bit and I've done the GP. That's not what it's about. So the key factors is reflect from your work experience and make sure you understand what it means to be a doctor. That's what you've gained from it. My other advice, if you've got some work experience coming up, keep a log, write down what the patient came in with. There might have been a headache or a cough. What did the doctor do? What did he examine? Maybe he sent off a chest x-ray, maybe he ordered an ECG, maybe he gave a prescription of antibiotics, maybe he didn't give anything. He might have just reassured a patient. Make sure look for the skills that the doctor demonstrated in that consultation. Verbal versus non-verbal. I don't know if you guys have heard of this expression. Verbal is speaking. So what kind of things he said, that was empathetic. How are you today? That must have been very difficult. These are all signs of empathy through verbal. Non-verbal, nodding, giving eye contact. Did the doctor do that? Or was he busy typing away on his computer? These are skills that I want you to look out for. How did the patient feel? You know, when the doctor was examining, did they wince in pain? That's not a good sign. It could be the doctor was too rough, or it could be they genuinely had a lot of pain. Notice these things. Remember, get that magnifying glass out and notice these small details in the consultation. How did you feel? How did you think the consultation went? Reflect on it afterwards. Write notes down, because guaranteed by the time it comes from your interview, your personal statement, you will not remember. So all these work experiences that you're going on, make sure you keep a log. And the most important question is, what is the doctor doing that I want to do in the future? I really like the way that the doctor gave a sticker to the child. It made the child really happy. Next time they come to the GP, they're more likely to come because they had a good experience. You know what? I'm going to use that as a future doctor. I'm going to have some stickers. Okay, I like the way the doctor asked this question. How would you use that in your own consultation, on your own practice? It's very important. If you go to the RCGB website, they've actually got Google Reflective Diary. They've got some advice about how you do reflection as well. Right, we're going to move on. Things to do in your spare time. So I think we're probably 3/4 of the way. Still got a couple of things that I want to talk about. The other thing that people get really hung up about is all the hobbies and the extracurricular stuff. And there's two things that you can do in your spare time. There's a supracurricular. I don't know if you've heard of this expression. I think it was coined by Cambridge University. And there's extracurricular stuff. Okay, and the difference between the two is extracurricular stuff is like your lambda, your guitar, your sports. And the supracurricular stuff is the academic extra stuff that you do. Very important if you're applying for Oxford and Cambridge. They don't really care about the extracurricular. It's all about the supracurricular. However, I don't want you to go away from this talk thinking extracurricular doesn't matter. It does, but not as a bigger degree as I think you think it does. Okay, I'll explain that in a little bit. So let's take supracurricular. It's subject specific. So it's something that you do in your free time, nothing to do with school. You do this in your free time. You've got an area of interest and you've decided to do some further research on it. It could be the COVID vaccine. It could be the effect of smoking on heart disease, lung cancer, something that's really taking your interest and you've decided to do some more research on it, okay? And it's an academic aspect. So an EPQ would be an example of a supracurricular. And these are the types of supracurricular things that you do. So you could have an online course, you could be involved in a research project, you could read something, an article in the student BMJ, maybe you're following a media story, maybe you watch a film based on a novel. I think there's a TV program at the moment that's based on a novel by a doctor. Visiting a place that's connected with your subjects. So supracurricular can take different forms. And it's not the same as extracurricular, and you need to have both. Okay, it's not just about those hobbies. If you're going to apply for something quite academic like Oxford and Cambridge, then you need your supracurricular activities. So as I said, extracurricular is more kind of D&V, sports, drama, music. And to be honest, it's a small part of the whole application process. So if you have done bronze instead of gold, it really doesn't matter. Okay, this is just to do with medicine, because like work experience, it's what you gained from that experience. We're not really bothered if you've done gold or bronze. It's great if you have, but it's what you gained from that. You gained resilience, you gained motivation, you gained teamwork. That's what matters when it comes to this extracurricular. You're going to put a little bit about it in your personal statement, but a lot of it you're going to talk about in your interview, okay? So by all means, do the extracurricular stuff because you enjoy it. It's very important you have a healthy work-life balance. We will ask that in the interview. What I'm saying is don't do it just for a tick box exercise for your application. It's a good sign then if you balance all these with your academics. You need to burn off steam. You need to let off stress. It's a great way to do that. But if you've got grade 2 piano and not grade 6, don't worry about it, okay? You're still demonstrating skills. So we need a little bit of extracurricular and a little bit of supracurricular. And just to show you an example of a personal statement, this is one that I've taken, how you put that in a personal statement. So let's read this, and please don't copy this and put it in your own personal statement, because all the universities, when you apply to them, they have a computer program and they look for plagiarism. So you can't ever copy anyone's personal statement. So last year, I also entered 2 medical essay competitions, which I really enjoyed researching about due to the very open titles. One of the essays was ethically centered, and one was more academically stretching. Being able to explore and research a topic of personal interest is something I would relish at university. But aside from academics, I have a profound passion for cricket. Despite my hectic schedule, I have been able to manage my time effectively and fit cricket around my exams. Through cricket, I've been able to meet a multitude of people from different backgrounds, as well as having experienced leadership through captaincy, whereby I've had to make hard decisions under pressure, raise team morale, and lead from the front. I also developed teamwork skills throughout my time playing schoolboy sports such as football. That's it. That's the most, that he's actually put in a lot. But your personal statement is 4,000 characters, which is around 650 words. The majority of it is going to be why you did medicine and your work experience. There's probably at the most one paragraph for extracurricular activities. So if you notice, he put his supracurricular activity first, and then he spoke about his extracurricular activity. This is a real personal statement, by the way, and it got an offer. He didn't put that he was captain of the first cricket team. Again, we're not worried about the levels. We're worried about what did he gain from it. And he spoke about leadership. He spoke about hard decisions under pressure, team morale, that he met people from different backgrounds, all very relevant skills if you're going to be a doctor. So that's why I want you to put all this in perspective. I see a lot of comments on Facebook worried about the nitty-gritty of things. These are like the sprinkling on the cake, okay? There's far more important things to do. Do the extracurricular stuff, do it because you enjoy it, and it's going to give you good work-life balance. And it's all about the skills that you gain from it, okay? So that's just a little example of how you can get personal statements. Right. We're going to move on. I think this is the last bit of my talk, and that's about the entrance test. And then I'll take questions, okay? Why do medical schools apply for entrance tests? Now, I've never sat in an entrance test, which shows how old I am. I think they came around in 2003. And before I said, you know, only take advice from doctors, actually, I would say not all doctors are good for taking advice from. Some of them, like myself, have never done an entrance test. And so I by no means give advice on it because I've not sat it. And this is where medical students are really good at giving advice because they've done it and they know the techniques and what revision materials they use. So they're great at giving advice for this. The reason why there's an entrance test is because we have to, as a medical school, find a way of ranking applicants. We can't take, you saw that huge number of applicants, we need to, whittle that down. So it's a way of ranking them depending on your score. It does provide a level playing field, okay? It's supposed to not be a barrier, but an opportunity. And especially when we've got teacher assessed grades, when some people didn't even sit A-levels and GCSEs, this is another useful method. And it gives a lot of data actually to universities at how they're doing and how their students are doing. So there are two types of entrance tests. You've got UCAT and you've got BMAT. UCAT is 5 sections, okay? And it's not really a science-based test. It's more about thinking skills. All that 11 plus stuff is coming back. You register in May, you sit it between July and October, and you can choose what date you sit between July and October. There's lots of sit-ins. It's on a computer, usually where you sat your theory test for your driving. You get the results there and then. As soon as you finish, it's all computer marked and they give you a result. There is some strategy in when you sit that UCAT. If you leave it till October, you're not going to give yourself much time for BMAT. So by all means, get some advice about when you should sit that UCAT. The score ranges from about 300 to 900. I would say you typically need around 6 to 8 weeks. So definitely by the summer holiday, if you're in year 12, you need to start getting your UCAT prep going. You can only sit it once. So some people who haven't got a decent UCAT score are very unlikely to get an interview. And if you've not decided to sit BMAT, your pathway to medicine might be finished already, even if you've got 9 GCSEs, all A stars. If you're only applying to UCAT universities and your UCAT score is not good, then the choices are you reapply next year, so you'll go a year behind, or you hope and put all your hopes on BMAT, that goes better for you. The UCAT does help medical students to assess a student's aptitude for medicine. So based on the UCAT score, they're going to decide whether to invite you for an interview. Sometimes they use it to decide whether they're going to give you an offer at the end of the day. If you've got two students who've performed really well in the interview and they've got the same grades, they might use the UCAT score as a differentiating factor. Some universities use UCAT as a cutoff, so everyone below the cutoff score won't get called for an interview. And like I said before, places like Oxford, they use the GCSE and the entrance exam, and they'll put a rank together and they'll invite the top for an interview. So what is a typical good score? I would say above 700. If you take an average, a total score of about 2,800, I think you're on a good ballpark figure. Then I would say, yes, apply for UCAT universities. You'll have your UCAT score before you submit your UCAS form. The average UCAT score in 2020 was 628. That figure is going up. We're seeing some really high UCAT scores this year. So that goes up year on year. And most universities will have it on their website, what the UCAT score is and what the cutoff is. This is, hopefully you can see this, and this is from St. George's, just to give you an idea how they use their UCAT score. So if you look at the second column, non-graduates, so again, with these universities, they do look at overseas and home separately. They'll put as few spaces for overseas offers. I'm not going to talk about graduates and overseas in this talk. I think this is long enough. So if we just look at the first column, non-graduates, that's home, that's people who are not overseas, and that this is your first degree, you haven't done a degree already. The cutoff for this year was 2710. So that's St. George's. So anyone below that was not invited to an interview. So they use an absolute UCAT cutoff score. And if you can see the data going from 2020, the actual UCAT score has increased. That's how the competition is. It's getting harder and harder. You have to get more of a score each year. Not all universities will operate a UCAT cutoff score. They'll look at other things like your GCSE grades, your UCAT score, your predicted A-levels, and they'll look at things more holistically. So again, if you haven't got a good UCAT score, don't apply to these universities with a high UCAT cutoff. And again, my role as a mentor is I will advise you on all that kind of thing, but it is a bit of a minefield. So when you get your UCAT score, you can decide, right, I might go for a university that has a low cutoff as opposed to a high cutoff score. Hands up, not an expert on UCAT and BMAT, I've never sat it myself, but from my students, this is some of the feedback that I've got. This is kind of a strategy that they've implied, that, you know, learn the key concepts, then do past papers, and then the last week, just do some intense revision. So typically 6 to 8 weeks. If you start too early, then you could burn out, and you've still got to do A-level prep. So, you know, you've got to be able to juggle all these things. And just remember, each section is timed, so that also adds a bit of pressure. Then there's the BMAT. So it's a different entrance exam, and it's more science-based. So you've got 3 sections: thinking skills, scientific knowledge, and an essay. An essay is not in UCAT. So if you think you're not the kind of person that is good at essays, you don't have to sit the BMAT. All these are optional. So you either do UCAT or BMAT. You don't have to do both. It's up to you which one you want to choose. However, if you've got an abysmal UCAT score, you're going to think, actually, I need to put everything into my BMAT revision. And the BMAT is typically sat in November, so it's after UCAT. So that's what I mean about leaving a gap. Don't sit UCAT too late that you don't have enough time to revise for BMAT. There's admissionstesting.org, you can get some free papers. Different universities use BMAT in different ways. In 2019, Oxford weighted the first section with 40%, the second section was 40%, and the essay is 20%. They shortlisted those with a mean score of 68%, but they, again, do look at other factors as well, like GCSEs. So what's a good UCAT score? Well, section 1 and 2 is marked from 1 to 9. An average is about 5. If you score above 7, then that's great, you're doing really well. The essay section is numbered 1 to 5, and then they give a letter A to E, where they're looking at SPAG, that old term is back, spelling, punctuation, and grammar. So if you're strong at essays, then that might be something for you. And there are 8 BMAT universities in the UK, and these are the ones, okay? So if you want to go to this university, you need to sit the BMAT. Every other medical school is UCAT. So my medical score, the average BMAT score are here. So these are the people who were invited for interviews. This is what they got in section 1. In 2019, it was 4.9. Section 2, it was 5.2. And for the essay, it was 3.3A. And again, if you can see, the essays have kind of remained consistent, but the other scores have got increased year on year. So it is competitive. It might not be for everyone. You don't have to sit the BMAT if you don't want to. If you've got a good UCAT score, you might think, right, I'm really confident. I've got an excellent UCAT score. I've got excellent GCSEs. I've got a great rocking personal statement. I'm just going to forget about BMAT and I'm just going to concentrate on getting all my A-level grades. That's absolutely fine. Research shows the biggest predictor of doing well in these tests is mastering the time conditions. So they look at this data and they think if you can do them in time conditions, then you're going to do well. So I just want you to take on board that the extracurricular stuff, the supercurricular stuff, the GCSEs, the A-levels, they're important. But the first hurdle is the entrance exams. If you don't do well in those exams, you're not going to get invited for an interview. So you must make those a priority more than anything else, which is why when I see people chatting about little things about extracurricular stuff and state schools and 4 A-levels, that stuff doesn't matter at this point. The entrance exam is the most important. That is what is going to secure you with a good university place, and to some lesser degree, the personal statement as well. So those are the 2 things that you need to concentrate on in the beginning. Right, we've come to the end. I've spoken for about an hour, just put together some key dates. So UCAT registration, this is probably if you're in year 12, starts in May. You're going to sit the exam over the summer holidays. Then the BMAT registration opens. You're going to submit your UCAS form. The UCAS form has a personal statement and the 4 uni choices. You have to decide that by then. Then you're going to sit the BMAT. Hopefully you get shortlisted for interviews, which run around December to March time. We're still interviewing in some places like King's and UCL. Interviews are still happening. You're going to start hearing from offers. Offers are already coming in. They might come into now, but by June you would have heard. Then you sit your A-levels and then you get your A-level results. So how do I come into all this? I do a full program, a Pathway to Medicine program, which is a bespoke service. And I go through each aspect. This is actually session 1 in that video consultation, number 1 in this diagram. Then I go through hot topics and we go through personal statements, and then we do some interview practice. Now, as I've said, this is absolutely not necessary if you want to get to a place in medical school. It should be a level playing field. You don't have to pay for expensive courses. I do charge for this, but you don't have to. There's a lot of resources on the internet. It's absolutely fine. If you feel you need some extra practice, you're lacking confidence, by all means, get in touch. And there are, for one in participation, I do reduce the charges. So like I said, although I'm advertising my course, don't feel that you have to go for it. There's lots of stuff that's free on the internet. Lots of organizations are running course. Most doctors are happy to give free advice, so do get in touch. And I've also got one more event if you might be interested in. If you're having difficulty getting work experience, then do go for this event that I've got in May. So what this event is doing is basically really, it's a lot of teaching. It's me teaching a lot and talking a lot about general practice. So some of the things that I talk about is typical working day of a GP. I'll go through what we do in our day-to-day practice. I'll go through the computer systems that we use, the various hats that we wear. We will watch 2 recorded patient consultations, and then I would analyze them with you. This is where students struggle. They don't know what to do when they do watch these consultations. So we analyze these consultations together, and then we're going to use that. How do we use this work experience in personal statements interviews? It's an hour and a half. It might be 2 hours because I'm going to try and get some interview practice in with you guys if you attend this session. If you think you qualify widely in participation, there is a discount, but it is not like the usual GP practice work experience, because doctors are busy. So when you sit in on a clinic, they don't have time to teach, not because they don't want to, they just don't have the time. So this is purely 90 minutes of me talking and teaching. So do sign up for that. The tickets are on Eventbrite, and I'll put a separate link to that on the Facebook group. So we'll get to the questions part now. I've kept you long enough. If I have missed any comments or questions on the Facebook, which is easily done, feel free to email me. If you've got specific queries, that's my email address. Email me there, and I'll try and answer anything as well. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and hopefully we're going to get some questions going. Right. Okay, I can see Saba's sent me some questions. Okay, someone's asked about international baccalaureates, and I am going to actually say I'm not going to answer anything about overseas. So I'm going to defer to that. Can you message me, email me, and I will answer that question. But just for the purpose, otherwise we could go on and on this talk. Overseas and graduates, I'm not going to address in this seminar. Sorry about that. Anything else? I can see on Saba the chat if there's any other questions. Okay. Something about that I'm going to answer it at the end. I don't know what it is that I'm answering at the end. If someone could repost that question. Repeat my email address. It's mbbsadmissions.uk@gmail.com. Okay, and I will put that up in a post on the Facebook group later. I'm really sorry, I'm relying on Saba for these questions because I can't scroll up. Okay, what type of work experience will help for my daughter in year 11? So if you saw, I had that slide up about all the different types of work experience: GP, hospital, pharmacist, dentistry, care home, any of those will count. Working in a shop, working for a charity, volunteering, that all counts as work experience. Okay, there's not a tick box exercise as such. It's what you do with that work experience that's important. When will she do the UCAT and BMAT? Hopefully I've answered that. UCAT year 12, at the end of year 12, from July to September you can sit that, and the beginning of year 13, in November she will sit the BMAT. You can only do those once a year. Okay, based on recent publicity, are students in private school now on a intake quota, as universities are encouraging intake from state schools? So, you know, again, don't get too caught up in private school and state schools. Okay, it doesn't matter. I'd say there's a little bit maybe for Oxford and Cambridge, where some of them do have quotas where they want to take from disadvantaged backgrounds. For you, it does not matter if you go to a state school or a private school. I want you to get that out of your head. If anything I want you to take from this talk is that it matters about the UCAT and the BMAT. That's the most important thing. These other things are minor details. If you go to a private school, what are you going to do? You're going to change to a state school? No, you're not. Okay, you're going to carry on being in an environment where you're with your friends, where you're with great teachers. They know you, they're going to write a great reference. Okay, so don't need to do crazy things and start thinking about switching schools for medical school applications. Don't do that. Likewise, if you're in a state school and you think, right, I want to go to a school that's less deprived, you know, life is about much more than that. Like I said, friendships, these teachers know you, they know what your weaknesses and your strengths, and they'll work with you. So don't worry about state school and private school. I really don't think it's an important issue, and there's more important things to do. Okay, I think that's all the questions that was covered. Someone said they'll listen to the recording later, that's fine. And I think the way Facebook works is that you can list, you know, go back on the page and listen to that talk. So there's one question about GCSEs, but they've replied. Good. So if you are from a school, I do these talks remotely from school, you know, get in touch. I'm happy to go into schools and talk. When I say go into schools, I mean, like, I can do those online. I'm not physically going to go into them. My email address, I'll give that out. Do get in touch. I hope this has been useful for you. I hope you've gained anything. Anyone who's missed it, you know, feel free to watch the Facebook chat and the talk. Okay, there is some still some questions coming through. Feel free to, you know, leave the chat. I'll try and answer them as much as I can. What should you advise for those students who want medicine and are still confused between medicine or dentistry? Work experience. Okay, it's really important. The whole point of work experience is not just to put something on your personal statement interview, it's to find out if that career is for you. And so many people do work experience and they decide, actually, you know what, I don't want to be a doctor. And that is the whole point of work experience. Like, you know what, this isn't for me. If you're not just, if you are undecided if this career is for you, do some work experience and decide that way. And you might want to do a range of things, do a little bit in GP practice, a little bit in the hospital, get an idea, speak to medics, speak to doctors, ask them what it's like as a career. People are worried about not having a social life. I do lots of things, and anyone who knows me, I do lots of things outside medicine. So it's not true. You can still have a great work-life balance. Yes, it's a very hard profession to go into. There's a lot of work, but it's what you make it of it as well. So work experience. I hope that's answered that. You're great. Someone said great. Good. Okay, I think we'll wrap up there. I hope you've learned something. I hope you enjoyed something. Do sign up for the GP work experience that I'm going to run. A lot of teaching that's quite intense as well. And thank you for coming.